I would like to introduce our keynote speaker for this event. We are extremely honored to have two-time Governor of Central Bank of Sri Lanka, Mr. Ajit Niwad Cabral, join us as the keynote speaker for this event. Governor Cabral first served as the 12th Governor of Central Bank of Sri Lanka from 2006 to 2015. He returned to this role in 2021 following a specific request by the President of Sri Lanka, Gotabaya Rajapaksa, to assume the role of governor once again to help steer Sri Lanka's economy in the post-pandemic years. During his tenure as the 12th governor, he helped Sri Lankan economy grow from a GDP of 24 billion US dollars to 79 billion US dollars, and provided leadership to several heavily oversubscribed international sovereign bond issuances. Prior to his current role, Governor Cabral served as a member of parliament and Sri Lanka Minister of Money, Capital Markets and State Enterprise Reforms. And before entering active politics in 2020, Governor Cabral served as the senior advisor of the Prime Minister on economic affairs. Governor Cabral, while thanking you once again for taking the time to join us today, I invite you to deliver your keynote address.
Thank you very much, and good evening to all of you. It's really a pleasure to be associated with all of you on this very important initiative and this discussion, which is focusing on the very important Sri Lanka-India relationships, as well as how this relationship could be revitalized, particularly in the context of the challenges that Sri Lanka is facing post-COVID. We know that India was a key ally in Sri Lanka's fight against COVID, having provided the country with a large number of doses of the COVID vaccines, as well as in the aftermath of the COVID. India has come to Sri Lanka's aid in providing liquidity support, as well as several other initiatives which has helped us to go forward with greater clarity. You mentioned about my special appointment by His Excellency the President. And at the time that we were grappling with the pandemic and its aftermath, we were fortunate that India took a key role in providing guidance, particularly in the field of liquidity support, at a time when Sri Lanka needed it in the challenge of meeting with the shortage that had been created by the tourism receipts being reduced. So I must say that it's a very apt topic for us to discuss right now. In the little note that you provided to me in relation to the discussion today, it was requested that I should look at the key challenges faced by Sri Lanka in resolving the economic crisis. Now, in this instance, as you know, Sri Lanka was in a lockdown for about 66 days in the year 2020, as well as about 50 days in 2021, which resulted in the growth numbers dwindling quite significantly in 2020, but of course, not so much in 2021. Now, in that context, with the great hit that Sri Lanka took from the reduction of tourism, our external sector account seemed to be quite challenged. And as a result, Sri Lanka did face certain challenges of dealing with its foreign exchange reserves as well as requirements. Now, in that context, Sri Lanka responded by reducing its imports, particularly in the context of motor vehicles. But we did find that we also suffered from the growth and the liquidity as well. So in that context, we did find the support from several countries, which assisted us to change the structure of our movement forward. And in so doing, we were fortunate that India also came in at the forefront in order to provide us with that support. Now, the challenges that we had was one was the external debt being settled and the perceptions that were being created out there with the downgrade that had also occurred. But more importantly, we did also find that certain sectors of the economy were challenged due to the COVID. One was retail trade, the other one was the investment. So these naturally took a toll, which now has been gently repaired and we are moving forward. So the key challenges, if I may very quickly enumerate, would be the need to ensure that our debt dynamics stay current and not in any way distressed. Two, the need to have more forex coming into the country. We did have some struggle in 2021, particularly with regard to the forex remittances that came in from the Middle East. We had to deal with the growth. Of course, growth which plummeted in 2020 had once again started rising in 2021 to the level of around 4%, and we expect growth to be around 5% this year. Tourism to be nursed back, and for that we had to have the vaccinations being administered very quickly. Government had to support, government's expenditure had to be supported by the central bank with new treasury bill support, and that also caused some monetization which needed to be dealt with. The business sectors had to be given a moratorium for a considerable period of time, and we are just about to lift those moratoriums, and we are looking at how we can deal with it so that there is a soft landing. Now, all these were the key challenges that Sri Lanka faced. And at the same time, we find that now tourism is back on track. We find that the investment opportunities have once again been expanded. We find that most of the country has got back to normalcy. The stock exchange is doing very well. Most of the companies have been progressing quite well and making even higher profits than they ever did in the past. So these continue to show that Sri Lanka is very well on the path of revival. We find that exports have increased to one of the highest ever in Sri Lanka's history in the year 2021. Imports had also increased, which in a way, although it is challenging the external sector, it shows that there is a robustness within the economy. The banking sector has done very well. So these give us the confidence to say that the outlook going forward is one of greater stability as well as excitement. And I'm sure many people are now looking at Sri Lanka once again to see how best they could make use of the conditions here in order to come in as a fairly key entrant. Now, India, being our closest neighbor, as well as a country with whom we have very, very sound relationships as far as both political and economic are concerned, is naturally going to be an ally that will be very helpful for Sri Lanka's progress for the future. Now, in that context, we find that India's exports into Sri Lanka last year was as high as $4.7 billion. We did see India providing us with financial assistance by way of a swap from the RBI, as well as an additional support from the RBI by way of an extension of the Asian ACU arrangement, Asian Clearing Union arrangement. And already, government to government, there is a very close discussion continuing for an additional support of $1.5 billion by way of oil support, as well as other essential goods support for on credit terms. So India has already started playing a very key role, but we expect India to play even a greater role by encouraging Indian businesses to take a greater presence in Sri Lanka's economic activities. Already, there are about 60 Indian companies which are flourishing in Sri Lanka and doing very well. But going forward, we would like to see more coming in. Just last year, we saw the Advani Group making an inroad into the port development activities with an investment which has been earmarked at around $700 million in the western terminal of the Colombo port, which is a historic investment and one of the largest ever single investment in Sri Lanka by a foreign entity. So we believe that there is more scope for the Indian private sector to come in and to be associated more closely in the Sri Lankan economy as well. I think in that context, India's priority for geoeconomics and the connectivity to help Sri Lanka in this crisis is very well received. Sri Lanka looks to India as a strong partner. We know that India's the balance of trade is in India's favor, but we also believe that India is genuinely concerned about improving the balance of trades in Sri Lanka's favor as well. So we are hoping that the path going forward will be structured in such a way that India will also encourage more and more exports to come from Sri Lanka into India. And that's an area which I believe we should be also looking at very closely for the future. What opportunities are available for Indian companies as well as Indian partnerships to take place? Of course, we do have a very close link in the cricket with India, which is one of the times when we do find areas to disagree with India and to have a very good competitive time. But in addition to that, there are many areas in the economic front where we can complement each other. Tourism is one such possibility where not only should we encourage the tourism between the two countries, but we must also encourage tourists to come to our region and then to do joint travel within India and Sri Lanka together. That would encourage more and more people to come in. That would have a greater reach for the tourists. And I'm sure that can be something that we can work together very, very closely going forward. Infrastructure development is another area that we can do well. Sri Lanka has also got certain strengths, particularly in the power sector, where many Sri Lankan companies are also working outside in the hydropower as well. And we are hoping that some Indian companies who want to do business, particularly in the field of renewable energy, would have a large number of opportunities in Sri Lanka. Health and pharmaceutical industry is another area that India can play a role in Sri Lanka and invest. So is education. We know India has a large number of very high quality educational institutions. And I think it's time now for Sri Lankans who are looking for higher education to be trained in Sri Lanka as well with the Indian degrees. And that could be another area where we can really promote businesses for the future. We also would like to see more and more Indian companies doing business in Sri Lanka and making investments, supporting the foreign direct investment. And that's an area which I think there is great scope. And people-to-people arrangements, as well as trade delegations and investment delegations between the two countries could also help revitalize the economic activities between the two countries. With regard to bilateral and multilateral arrangements, I think both countries are members of SAARC, as well as in certain other institutions that are connected to SAARC. People-to-people contact has been at very advanced levels where we have done well to have relationships built up over a long period of time. And I believe we should be able to search for new areas of cooperation as well as complementing each other to have great amount of business relationships built up. So for that, I think there's great scope. In my view, not enough has still been done. There is ample opportunities for business to business as well as professional association to professional association relationships to take place, government to government relationships to take place, university to university relationships to take place. And those need to be fostered and nurtured very, very closely. Someone, as well as some organizations, must take the leadership role in doing so. And perhaps it's a need of the hour for us to look at that opportunity more closely than what we have done in the past. So thank you for giving me this opportunity. I thought I will just share a few thoughts which would help us to have a very fruitful dialogue. I'm thankful to you for initiating this dialogue, and I'm sure with the new ideas that would probably emanate from a discussion of this nature, we could chart even a more holistic course for the two countries to traverse in the future. Thank you very much.